What would you do if your own daughter sent you a message saying, "We're cutting you off. Don't look for us anymore"? I got that text, and my reply changed everything. But what happened next? Well, let's just say nobody in my family saw it coming. Stay with me because this story takes a turn you won't believe. So there I was, minding my own business on a perfectly ordinary Tuesday morning. The sun was peeking through the kitchen window, casting that golden glow on my favorite mug, the one that says, "World's okayest mom." I was halfway through my second cup of coffee, scrolling through Facebook, chuckling at a video of a cat trying to fit into a shoebox when my phone buzzed. At first, I thought it was another one of those, "Your car warranty is about to expire" scams. You know the ones, persistent, annoying, and always popping up when you least expect it. I almost ignored it, but something made me glance at the screen. It was a message from my daughter, Tamsin. Now, let me tell you, my heart did a little somersault. I love hearing from Tamsin, even if it's just a quick, "Hey mom, what's your lasagna recipe again?" or a blurry photo of Jasper and Mira covered in spaghetti sauce. But this time, it wasn't a recipe request or a funny meme. It was a text that would change everything. The message read, "We've decided we're going to distance ourselves from you. Please don't look for us anymore." I stared at the screen, blinking, convinced I'd read it wrong. I even took off my glasses and wiped them on my pajama sleeve, like maybe a smudge was playing tricks on me. But no, the words were still there, cold and final, staring back at me like a slap in the face. My first thought was, is this a joke? Did I forget Tamsin's birthday? Did I accidentally like one of her ex-boyfriend's photos on Facebook again? I racked my brain, trying to remember if I'd said something wrong the last time we spoke. Maybe I'd made a comment about her new haircut that came out the wrong way. Or maybe I'd given the kids too much sugar when I babysat last weekend. But nothing seemed big enough to warrant this. Then, as I read the message again, I noticed the wording. It didn't sound like Tamsin at all. She's always been warm, a little scattered, and never one for confrontation. This message was formal, almost businesslike, like something you'd get from a customer service rep, not your own flesh and blood. "We've decided," who's we, "and distance ourselves." It sounded like she was firing me from the family. That's when it hit me this had Clive's fingerprints all over it. He's always been a little, well, let's just say, he's the type who'd send a thank you note after a root canal, polite but cold. I could practically hear his voice in my head, rehearsing the message before hitting send. And you know what Tamsin did? She just agreed. No explanation, no "I love you mom," just silence. I waited thinking maybe she'd follow up with a call, or at least a crying face emoji. But nothing, just that one cold message, hanging in the air like a storm cloud. I sat there, phone in hand, feeling like the ground had opened up beneath me. My mind raced with questions. What did I do? Was it something I said? Something I didn't say? I replayed every conversation, every family dinner, every awkward holiday gathering in my head, searching for clues. But all I found was a growing sense of dread, like I was standing in the middle of a tornado, and everyone else was just watching. Let me ask you, have you ever felt blindsided by someone you love? Like, one minute you're laughing together, sharing stories, and the next, you're a stranger in your own life. It's a special kind of pain, isn't it? The kind that makes you question everything you thought you knew. I kept thinking, how did we get here? I mean, I wasn't a perfect mom. Who is? But I tried my best. I was there for every scraped knee, every school play, every heartbreak. I made her favorite mac and cheese when she was sad, and I cheered the loudest at her graduation. I thought we were close. I thought we were unbreakable. But now with one message, it felt like all of that had been erased. I wanted to call her, to demand an explanation, to beg her to reconsider. But something stopped me. Maybe it was pride, or maybe it was fear. Fear that she'd just repeat the same words, or worse, not answer at all. So I sat there staring at my phone, feeling more alone than I had in years. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I tried to distract myself, folded laundry, watered Clementine, even organized the junk drawer. But no matter what I did, that message kept replaying in my mind. I kept checking my phone, hoping for a follow-up, a sign that it was all a misunderstanding. But there was nothing, just silence. That night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet hum of the house. I thought about all the times I'd comforted Tamsin when she was hurting, all the times I'd told her, no matter what, I'm here for you. And now, she was the one shutting the door. I wondered if she was lying awake too, or if she'd already moved on, her life continuing without me. I'll be honest, I cried. Not the pretty movie star kind of crying, but the ugly, snotty, can't catch your breath kind. I let myself feel it all, the hurt, the confusion, the anger. And somewhere in the middle of it, I realized something. I wasn't just mourning the loss of my daughter. I was mourning the loss of the life I thought I had, the family I thought we were. But as the night wore on, and the tears dried, a tiny spark of something else began to flicker inside me. Maybe it was defiance, or maybe it was just survival instinct. But I knew one thing for sure: I couldn't let this message define me. I couldn't let someone else's decision erase all the love and effort I'd poured into my family. I didn't know what the future would hold, or if things would ever go back to the way they were. But I knew I had to find a way to keep going, to keep living, even if it meant doing it on my own. And so, as the first light of dawn crept through the window, I made myself a promise: I would face whatever came next with as much grace and strength as I could muster. Because if there's one thing I've learned in this life, it's that mothers are tougher than we look. And sometimes the only way out is through. I sat there, phone in hand, staring at that cold, final message from Tamsin. My mind was a jumble of emotions: hurt, confusion, anger, and if I'm being honest, a little bit of disbelief. I mean, after everything I'd done, after all the years of being there for her, this was how it ended, with a text message that sounded like it was written by a lawyer. I could have begged, I could have cried. I could have sent a flurry of desperate texts, demanding an explanation, pleading for a second chance. But something inside me, maybe it was pride, maybe it was exhaustion, or maybe it was just the stubborn streak I inherited from my own mother, stopped me. Instead, I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and channeled my inner Meryl Streep. You know, the one from The Devil Wears Prada. Cool, collected, and just a little bit terrifying. I typed out my reply, my fingers trembling just a bit. No problem. I'm going to cancel the automatic payments for your house and car, and I'll let you know when it's done. I read it over twice, making sure it was clear, but not cruel. Then, with a deep breath, I hit send. Mic drop, right? I mean, if you're going to cut me off, you better be ready to cut off the gravy train too. For years, I'd been quietly helping them out. Covering the mortgage when things got tight, making sure the car payment went through so they could get to work, slipping a little extra into their account when Jasper needed new shoes or Mara needed braces. I never made a big deal out of it. That's what moms do, right? We help. We give. We make sure our kids have what they need, even if it means going without ourselves. But now, with one text, all of that was over. I won't lie, my hands were shaking as I set the phone down. The house felt suddenly too quiet, like the silence was pressing in on me from all sides. I was scared. Not just for them, though I worried about how they'd manage without my help, but for me. What would my life look like without Tamsin? Would I be that lady who talks to her plants and names her Roomba? I wandered around the house, trying to distract myself. I made a cup of tea, but forgot about it and let it go cold. I tried to read a book, but the words just swam on the page. I even turned on the TV, hoping for a little mindless distraction. But every commercial seemed to be about happy families or mother-daughter spa days. I couldn't escape it. The achy in my chest was real, and it wasn't going away anytime soon. But then, as the day wore on, something strange started to happen. Amid all the fear and sadness, a tiny spark of excitement flickered to life. It was faint at first, just a whisper in the back of my mind, but it was there. Maybe, just maybe, this was my chance to rediscover myself. To do all the things I'd put on hold for everyone else. I'd spent so many years being Mom. The fixer, the helper, the one who made everything better. But who was I, really, when I wasn't busy taking care of everyone else? I started to think about all the things I'd always wanted to do, but never had the time or energy for. I'd always wanted to take a painting class, to see if I had any of Grandma's artistic talent. I dreamed of traveling, maybe not around the world, but at least to that little bed and breakfast by the coast I'd seen in a magazine. I'd even thought about joining a book club, or trying yoga, or learning how to make sourdough bread. The more I thought about it, the more the fear started to fade, replaced by a sense of possibility. Maybe this wasn't the end of my story. Maybe it was just the beginning of a new chapter, one where I got to be the main character for once. I could almost hear my mother's voice in my head, telling me to pull myself up by my bootstraps and make lemonade out of lemons. She was a tough old bird, my mom, and she'd been through her share of heartbreaks. If she could survive, so could I, of course. Not everyone saw it that way. When word got out, thanks to my sister Avis, who has never met a piece of family gossip she didn't want to share, the family group chat exploded. My brother Lowell wanted to know what happened. My cousin Vernon offered to have a word with Clive. My Aunt Opal sent me a string of heart emojis and a recipe for chicken soup, as if that would fix everything. I appreciated the support, but I also knew this was something I had to face on my own. That night, as I lay in bed, I let myself imagine what my life could look like if I stopped waiting for Tamsin to come back. What if I started living for myself instead of through her? What if I found joy in the little things, morning walks, fresh flowers on the table, a good book and a glass of wine at the end of the day? What if, instead of mourning what I'd lost, I celebrated what I still had? It wasn't easy. The pain was still there, lurking just beneath the surface. But for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe I wasn't just the mother who'd been left behind. Maybe I was a woman with a whole life ahead of her, waiting to be lived. As I drifted off to sleep, I made myself another promise. I would give myself permission to grieve, but I would also give myself permission to grow. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that life doesn't always go the way we plan. But sometimes, the detours lead us exactly where we need to be. The next few days were a wild, unpredictable roller coaster. One of those old wooden ones that rattles your bones and makes you question your life choices. I'd wake up in the morning with a heavy ache in my chest, the kind that makes you want to pull the covers over your head and pretend the world doesn't exist. I'd let myself cry, sometimes quietly, sometimes ugly and loud, into my pillow. I'd mourn the loss of Tamsin's voice, the absence of her texts, the way she used to call me for advice about everything from recipes to raising Jasper and Mira. But then, out of nowhere, a song would come on the radio, Fleetwood Mac's Go Your Own Way, of all things, and suddenly I'd be up on my feet, dancing in the kitchen like nobody was watching. It was a strange, almost dizzying mix of emotions. One minute I was grieving the family I thought I had. The next I was laughing at myself for getting so worked up over a text message. I started to wonder, what if this was a blessing in disguise? What if, instead of chasing after people who didn't appreciate me, I started chasing after my own happiness? The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. For so long my life had revolved around Tamsin, Jasper, Mira, and let's be honest, making sure everyone else was okay. I'd forgotten what it felt like to put myself first. So I decided to do something about it. I signed up for a pottery class at the local community center. I'd always admired those beautiful, handmade bowls and mugs at the farmer's market, and I figured why not give it a try. The first class was a mess, literally. My hands were covered in clay, my bowl looked more like a lopsided ashtray, and I accidentally flung a chunk of wet clay across the room, nearly hitting poor Enid from the knitting club. But you know what? I laughed. I laughed so hard my sides hurt. It felt good to be a beginner at something, to make mistakes and not care who was watching. Next, I booked a weekend trip with my girlfriends. We'd been talking about it for years, always saying one day when things calm down. Well, things had certainly calmed down, maybe a little too much, so I figured there was no time like the present. We packed our bags, piled into Avis's minivan, and headed for the coast. We spent the weekend eating too much seafood, walking on the beach, and reminiscing about the good old days. We laughed until we cried, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like myself again. Not just someone's mom or grandma, but a woman with her own stories, her own dreams. And then, in a moment of either bravery or temporary insanity, I decided to try online dating. Now, let me tell you, that was an adventure all on its own. I set up a profile, uploaded a photo, and started swiping. I quickly learned that the world of online dating is not for the faint of heart. There were men who posted photos with their fish, men who wrote essays about their ex-wives, and one gentleman who claimed to be a retired astronaut, but looked suspiciously like my old high school gym teacher. I went on a few coffee dates, some awkward, some surprisingly pleasant, and one that ended with me running out of the cafe because the guy brought his pet iguana in a backpack. But here's the thing. For the first time in years, I was doing things for me. I was saying yes to new experiences, even if they scared me. I was learning to enjoy my own company, to find joy in the little things. A perfectly brewed cup of coffee, a walk in the park, a new book from the library. I realized I'd spent so much time giving, I'd forgotten how to receive. I'd forgotten how to let myself be happy, just for the sake of being happy. I started to notice changes in myself. I stood a little taller, I smiled more even at strangers. I found myself humming as I went about my day, not because everything was perfect, but because I was finally allowing myself to feel free. I even started talking to Clementine a little more. Though I drew the line at naming my other plants, I also reconnected with old friends, People I hadn't seen in years because I was always too busy with family obligations. We met for lunch, swapped stories, and laughed about the ridiculousness of getting older. We talked about our kids, our grandkids, our hopes and fears. It was comforting to know I wasn't alone, that other women my age were going through their own ups and downs, their own moments of loss and rediscovery. Of course, there were still hard days. There were moments when the loneliness crept in, when I missed Tamsin so much it hurt to breathe. There were nights when I lay awake, wondering if she was okay, if she missed me, if she'd ever reach out. But those moments became fewer and farther between. I learned to sit with the pain, to let it wash over me and then let it go. I learned that it was okay to grieve, and it was also okay to move forward. And let me tell you, ladies, freedom looks good on us. There's a certain glow that comes from living life on your own terms, from embracing the unknown and trusting that you'll be okay, no matter what. I started to see myself not as someone who'd been left behind, but as someone who was brave enough to start over. I was no longer defined by my role as a mother or a grandmother. I was defined by my own choices, my own happiness. So if you ever find yourself at a crossroads, wondering what comes next, remember this: it's never too late to choose yourself. It's never too late to find joy, to try something new, to dance in your kitchen to Fleetwood Mac. Life is short, and we owe it to ourselves to make the most of every moment, because at the end of the day, the only person you really need to make happy is you. A few weeks passed and I found myself settling into a new rhythm. It was strange, at first, to have so much time and space that wasn't filled with worry or obligation. I'd wake up in the morning and, instead of checking my phone for messages from Tamsin or reminders about bills to pay, I'd stretch, make my coffee, and sit by the window with Clementine, watching the world wake up. I was learning to enjoy my own company, to savor the quiet moments, and to laugh at the little things, like the way Percy, my Roomba, always managed to get stuck under the same chair, or how my attempt at sourdough bread turned out more like a doorstop than a loaf. I was starting to feel lighter, freer, and, dare I say, a little bit proud of myself for not falling apart. Then, one afternoon, just as I was about to head out for my pottery class, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen, expecting a reminder from the community center or maybe a message from one of my new friends. But there it was, Tamsin's name lighting up my phone for the first time in weeks. My heart did a little flip-flop. I hesitated, thumb hovering over the screen, unsure if I was ready to open that door again. But curiosity, and let's be honest, a mother's love, got the better of me. Her message was short, almost sheepish. "Hi Mom, hope you're well. Can we talk?" I stared at it for a moment, 1,000 thoughts racing through my mind. Was she angry? Was she in trouble? Did she need something? I took a deep breath, reminded myself of all the progress I'd made, and replied, "Of course, I'm here." We talked that evening, and it was different. She sounded tired, a little worn around the edges, and I could hear the strain in her voice. She told me that things hadn't been as easy as she and Clive had expected. The bills were piling up, Jasper and Mira were acting out, and the stress was starting to take its toll. She didn't come right out and ask for help, but I could hear it in the way she talked about missing our Sunday dinners, or how she wished she had someone to watch the kids for an afternoon. For a moment, the old me, the fixer, the helper, the mom who swoops in and makes everything better, wanted to jump in, to offer money, to drive over with a casserole and a hug. But I stopped myself. I listened, I asked questions, I let her talk, and I didn't try to solve her problems for her. It wasn't easy. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to do something, to make it all better. But I remembered the promise I'd made to myself, to set boundaries, to respect my own needs, to let Tamsin figure things out on her own. So, I told her I loved her. I told her I was proud of her for trying to make it work. And then I said, "I'm here if you need advice, but I can't fix everything for you. You're stronger than you think." There was a long pause on the other end, and then she said, quietly, "Thanks, Mom." I think I needed to hear that. For the first time in a long time, I felt respected. Not just needed, not just useful, but truly respected as a person, not just a safety net. It was a strange, wonderful feeling, and I realized that by letting go, by refusing to jump in and rescue her, I was giving her the chance to grow too. I was letting her be an adult, to make her own choices and learn from her own mistakes. And in doing so, I was reclaiming a little piece of myself. Over the next few weeks, our relationship started to shift. We talked more, but the conversations were different, more honest, more open, less about what I could do for her and more about who we were as people. She started asking about my pottery class, about my weekend trips, about the new friends I was making. She even laughed when I told her about my disastrous online dating adventures, and for the first time in ages, we felt like equals. Two women navigating the ups and downs of life, learning as we went. I won't pretend it was all sunshine and roses. There were still moments of hurt, of regret, of wishing things could go back to the way they were. But I also knew that the only way forward was to let go of the past, to accept that we were both changing, both growing, and that was okay. Sometimes letting go is the bravest thing you can do. It's scary, it's painful, but it's also liberating. It gives you the space to find yourself, to rediscover the things that make you happy, to laugh at the absurdity of life and all its unexpected twists and turns. And let's be honest, sometimes you just have to laugh. Like the time I accidentally sent a text meant for my book club to Tamsin, inviting her to bring wine and gossip. Or when I tried to impress my pottery teacher by making a vase and ended up with something that looked suspiciously like a lopsided pineapple. Or when Percy, my Roomba, staged a rebellion and tried to eat my slippers. Life is messy, unpredictable, and often ridiculous. But it's also beautiful, especially when you learn to let go and enjoy the ride. So, if you're ever faced with a message that breaks your heart, remember you're not alone. We've all been there, standing at the crossroads wondering what comes next. Sometimes, the best thing you can do is take a deep breath, set your boundaries, and trust that you'll find your way. And who knows, you might just find yourself along the way. Now, let me ask you, what would you do if you got a message like that? Would you cancel the payments or send them a fruit basket with a note that says, "Good luck"? Life is too short to hold grudges, too precious to waste on people who don't appreciate you. So go ahead, choose yourself, laugh a little, and remember that the power of letting go is the greatest gift you can give yourself. If this story hit home, or even just made you laugh, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We're all in this together, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Share your own stories in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. And remember, you're stronger than you think, and it's never too late to put yourself first. See you next time, ladies.